thing is like with addiction, it's all rooted in our childhood trauma. And it's the self-soothing mechanism. We're trying to self-regulate. We're trying to feel happy. We're trying to feel at peace. We're trying to feel something positive from that addiction. And so that's the only way we've found that we can feel that feeling of happiness, peacefulness, etc. Doing something compulsively or not being able to stop doing something, even at the expense of the collateral damage that's left behind from it. So it can be a physical addiction, such as alcohol and drugs, or it can be a behavioural addiction, such as pornography, gambling, food, so forth. So addictions for me, it's always about, well, what are you seeking in the addiction or the addictive behaviour? Maybe it's happiness, maybe it's joy, maybe it's, you know, freedom, right? Escapism. So whatever we're seeking in the addiction is the thing that we can't achieve in childhood. So that's how I classify addictions. And we can't just stop doing something because it's the only way that we've learned to cope with our discomfort. So we really have to learn to sit in discomfort and be able to feel into that discomfort if we're going to overcome the addiction. But we also have to have a really good understanding of, why am I addicted? What is it that I'm seeking? Because a lot of people aren't really conscious to what it is they're seeking in the addiction. It's very unconscious behavior to most extent. And the thing is like with addiction, it's all rooted in our childhood trauma. And it's the self-soothing mechanism. We're trying to self-regulate. We're trying to feel happy. We're trying to feel at peace. We're trying to feel something positive from that addiction. And so that's the only way we've found that we can feel that feeling of happiness, peacefulness, etc. We've done the addiction, like whether we've used drugs or we've used pornography, usually afterwards there's so much shame behind it as well. And so it's really that shame spiral that we go into as well. And a lot of addiction is rooted in shame. And the other thing I'll say about addiction is at the end of the day, we're all seeking connection. And the reason why we've become addicted is because we're seeking connection and we can't have it, we can't find it. So a drug addiction, well, we can kind of classify a drug addiction as being a physical addiction. So we become physically addicted to alcohol, heroin, cocaine, something like that. Whereas behavioural addiction is something that you still have a compulsion to do. So whether that's gambling, pornography, shopping, food, those sorts of things. So even though we may not be physically addicted to it, we still can't stop it because it's what we're seeking. It's the only way that we've learned to self-regulate and feel better, feel good, which is why we're doing it. We're seeking relief in addiction. That's the core root issue of addiction. We're seeking some sort of relief. It's temporary relief. I've seen it myself. I've seen it with clients I've worked with. I've seen them overcome their trauma and overcome their addiction. Usually addiction is quite a long road to recovery, but not always. But there's usually a longer road to recovery with addiction. But I also find that with recovery centers and with detoxes, they're just really tackling a medical issue rather than a emotional issue and a spiritual issue. So I think that, you know, we can always go to rehab and detox and get clean and do all that sort of stuff. But then it's also really important to seek out a trauma therapist, because trauma therapists are going to work with the addiction. When it comes to internal family systems, we can work with that addicted part of them to really have a good understanding of what's going on, why that addicted part's there, what it's trying to do, what it's trying to achieve. And then also it's really important to go in and heal the inner child that's in a lot of pain, that's still there. And this is where I come back to, the inner child is going to rule our life and drive our life until we become conscious to it. And addiction is usually rooted in, well, it's always rooted in our childhood trauma. Therefore, the inner child is the one that's adapted. It's the inner child that's really sought out that addiction as well. So working with the inner child and healing that inner child is also really, really important to overcoming addiction. So